There comes a moment in every life when a painful realization quietly arrives. Not all people are meant to stay. Not every hand you hold today will still be holding yours tomorrow. Not every promise survives time. Not every friendship survives growth. Not every relationship survives truth. And yet, despite knowing this, the human heart continues to resist. It clings. It pleads. It negotiates. It hopes. It waits, as if determination alone can prevent what nature has already decided. Perhaps this is one of the greatest sources of suffering. Not that people leave, but that we spend so much energy fighting their departure. Look closely at a tree in autumn. The leaves do not argue with the season. They do not demand permanence. They do not cling desperately to the branches. When their time arrives, they let go. Silently, naturally, without resentment, without fear, without resistance. Nature understands something that human beings often forget. Everything has its season. Every beginning contains an ending. Every arrival contains a departure. Every meeting contains a farewell. Marcus Aurelius observed this reality everywhere. In the rise and fall of empires. In the changing of generations. In the movement of clouds across the sky. In the endless transformation of life itself. Nothing remains unchanged. Nothing remains forever. And yet people continue to suffer because they demand permanence from a world built upon change. A friendship ends, and they suffer. A relationship fades, and they suffer. Someone they trusted walks away, and they suffer. Not merely because loss hurts. Loss always hurts. But because part of them insists reality should have unfolded differently. Part of them refuses to accept what has already happened. This inner resistance becomes a second wound, often deeper than the first. The Stoics understood something profound. Pain is inevitable. Resistance is optional. When someone leaves your life, there is often a temptation to chase. To explain, to convince, to persuade, to hold tighter, to make one final argument, to force understanding, to force reconciliation, to force permanence. But some doors close not because you failed. Some doors close because they were never meant to remain open forever. This is difficult to accept, especially when love is involved. Especially when memories are involved. Especially when years have been invested. The mind begins replaying every conversation, every moment, every possibility, searching for a different outcome, searching for a way back, searching for a version of reality where nothing changes. But reality remains unmoved. The river continues flowing. Time continues moving. Life continues unfolding. And eventually a choice appears. Hold on to what is gone. Or make peace with what is. Many people spend years choosing the first option. They carry old relationships like ghosts. Old betrayals. Old disappointments. Old conversations. Old versions of people who no longer exist. Their bodies move forward through time. But part of their spirit remains trapped in yesterday. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself repeatedly that the present moment is all any person truly possesses. Not yesterday. Not tomorrow. Now. Yet how much of life is lost living in memories of people who have already departed? How much peace is sacrificed mourning realities that can no longer return? How much energy is consumed by wishing life had followed a different path? There is a subtle form of wisdom that arrives when a person finally understands this. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go is accepting reality. These are not the same thing. Giving up comes from weakness. Letting go comes from clarity. Giving up says nothing matters. Letting go says, I cannot control what is no longer mine to control. This distinction changes everything. Because the desire to control people is often hidden beneath the language of love. We want them to stay. We want them to understand. We want them to choose differently. We want them to become who we need them to be. But every human being walks their own path. Every soul carries its own lessons. Every life follows its own journey. The moment we try to control that journey, suffering begins. Not because our intentions are bad. Because reality does not belong to us. A bird is beautiful precisely because it is free. The moment you place it inside a cage, something essential disappears. Relationships are no different. The people who remain by your side willingly are gifts. The people who must be forced to stay were already gone. This is one of the hardest truths adulthood teaches. You cannot make someone value you. You cannot make someone understand you. You cannot make someone choose you. You cannot make someone remain. You can only choose how you respond when they do not. And that response determines whether loss becomes wisdom or bitterness. Some people allow loss to harden them. They become cynical, distrustful, closed, afraid to care again, afraid to love again, afraid to believe in people again. Others allow loss to deepen them. They become wiser, more compassionate, more understanding of life's fragile nature, more appreciative of the connections that remain. Though event may be the same, though outcome becomes different, not because circumstances changed, because perspective changed. This is where the art of letting people go truly begins. Not with the departure itself, with the meaning we assign to it. A person leaves, and the ego immediately begins speaking. They abandoned me, they never cared, I wasn't enough, I failed, but wisdom speaks differently. Wisdom asks a quieter question. What if this ending is not punishment? What if it is preparation? What if this departure is creating space for something that could not arrive while the old remained? Nature constantly removes what no longer serves growth. Trees shed leaves. Snakes shed skin. The body sheds old cells. Life itself is a process of release. Why should human relationships be any different? The older you become, the more clearly you begin to see this pattern. Some people enter your life for a season. Some for a lesson. Some for a chapter. A rare few for a lifetime. Suffering often begins when we confuse one for the other. When we demand permanence from temporary visitors. When we build forever around what was only meant to pass through. The wise eventually learn a different approach. Appreciate fully. Love deeply. But hold lightly. Because everything borrowed from life must eventually be returned. Because everything borrowed from life must eventually be returned. This includes people. Perhaps especially people. There is a quiet sadness hidden within every meaningful relationship. Not because relationships are tragic. Because they are temporary. Even the strongest bond cannot escape time forever. One day, through distance, change, circumstance, or death, every connection reaches a point of separation. Most people spend their lives trying not to think about this reality. Marcus Aurelius chose the opposite approach. He looked directly at it. Not to become cold. Not to become detached from love. But to love more honestly. Because when you understand that nothing lasts forever, appreciation deepens. Gratitude deepens. Presence deepens. You stop taking people for granted. You stop assuming there will always be another conversation, another opportunity, another tomorrow, and something remarkable happens. The fear of losing people begins transforming into appreciation for having them at all. This shift changes everything. Many relationships suffer because people love through possession rather than gratitude. They treat people as permanent fixtures, as guarantees, as obligations, as property. Then life reminds them that human beings cannot be owned. People change. People evolve. People leave. People die. And no amount of attachment can prevent these realities. The Stoics understood that attachment often disguises itself as love. But they are not the same. Love says, I appreciate your presence. Attachment says, I need your presence. Love says, I wish for your happiness. Attachment says, I need you for mine. Love gives freedom. Attachment fears it. This distinction becomes painfully visible when relationships begin changing. A friend grows distant. A partner changes. A loved one follows a path you never expected. And suddenly their attachment begins protesting. The mind resists. The heart resists. The ego resists. Everything within us wants reality to remain exactly as it was. But reality never makes such promises. The river does not remain still. The seasons do not remain fixed. Children do not remain children. Parents do not remain young. Life itself is movement. Constant movement. And every attempt to freeze that movement creates suffering. One of the hardest lessons a person learns is that not everyone who enters your life is meant to accompany you to the end. Some people arrive to teach. Some arrive to challenge. Some arrive to awaken. Some arrive to reveal strengths you did not know you possessed. And when their purpose is complete, they leave. Not because the relationship was meaningless, because it served its purpose. Think about the people who shaped your life. Not all of them remained, yet many left behind lessons that continue guiding you years later. Some gave wisdom. Some gave love. Some gave pain. Some gave clarity. Some taught you what to seek. Others taught you what to avoid. Every encounter leaves something behind. Even departures leave gifts, though these gifts often arrive disguised as heartbreak. Seneca once observed that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. This becomes especially true when people leave. The event itself hurts, but then the mind begins creating additional suffering. It imagines alternative outcomes, imagines different conversations, imagines different endings, imagines futures that never happened. And each imagined possibility becomes another chain binding us to the past. The wise learn to recognize these chains, not to suppress emotion, but to prevent emotion from becoming imprisonment. Grief deserves respect. Loss deserves mourning. Pain deserves acknowledgement. Stoicism was never about becoming emotionally numb. It was about refusing to become emotionally enslaved. There is a profound difference. Marcus Aurelius himself experienced tremendous loss. He lost children. He lost friends. He lost people he loved deeply. Yet his writings reveal a man constantly reminding himself of nature's laws. Everything changes. Everything passes. Everything borrowed must eventually be returned. This understanding did not erase sorrow. It gave sorrow context. And context transforms suffering. Without context, pain feels meaningless. With context, pain becomes part of life's larger story. Imagine holding sand in your hand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. The more desperately you cling, the less you retain. Relationships often work the same way. The harder we attempt to possess people, the more tension we create. The more fear we introduce. The more insecurity we generate. True connection requires space. Space to breathe. Space to grow. Space to evolve. Space to leave if leaving becomes necessary. Because freedom is not the enemy of love. Freedom is the environment in which genuine love survives. The people who truly belong in your life do not stay because they are trapped. They stay because they choose to. And choice carries a beauty that obligation never can. This realization becomes especially important after betrayal. Because betrayal creates a unique kind of wound. Not merely the loss of a person. The loss of trust. The loss of certainty. The loss of an image you once believed was real. Many people spend years carrying betrayal like a stone inside their chest. Replaying it. Feeding it. Reopening it. Allowing it to shape every future relationship. But in doing so, they remain connected to the very person they are trying to forget. The body moves forward. The mind remains behind. The betrayal continues living rent-free within the soul. The Stoics offered a different path. Not denial. Release. Because holding resentment does not punish the other person. It punishes the one carrying it. Every day spent feeding old anger is a day surrendered to the past. Every day spent reliving betrayal is a day stolen from the present. And eventually, a decision must be made. Will this wound become a prison? Or will it become a teacher? The answer determines everything. Because pain always asks a question. Not why did this happen? But what will you become because of it? Some become bitter. Others become wise. Some become closed. Others become discerning. Some become cynical. Others become compassionate. The event does not decide. The response decides. And perhaps nowhere is this more evident than in the art of letting people go. Because letting go is not forgetting. It is not pretending the relationship never mattered. It is not erasing memories. It is not denying love. Letting go is accepting that a chapter can be valuable even when it ends. It is accepting that meaning does not require permanence. It is accepting that gratitude and goodbye can coexist. This is a difficult wisdom. But it is also liberating. Because once you understand it, you stop measuring relationships solely by duration. You begin measuring them by what they contributed to your journey. And suddenly, even endings contain value. Even departures contain lessons. Even loss contains transformation. Even heartbreak contains hidden gifts waiting to be discovered. Even heartbreak contains hidden gifts waiting to be discovered. But those gifts rarely reveal themselves immediately. At first, there is only silence. The kind of silence that follows a departure. The kind that lingers in empty rooms. The kind that appears unexpectedly in ordinary moments. You walk familiar streets and notice someone's absence. You hear a song and remember a conversation. You reach for a message that will never arrive. And suddenly, grief returns. Not because you are weak. Because you are human. Human beings are creatures of attachment. We build memories around people. We weave them into our routines, our expectations, our sense of identity. And when they leave, part of that internal structure collapses. For a while, life feels unfamiliar. The world continues moving, yet something inside remains still. Many people become frightened during this period. They interpret the emptiness as failure, as loneliness, as evidence that something has gone wrong. But what if the emptiness serves a purpose? What if the silence is not punishment? What if it is preparation? Nature often creates space before creating growth. A field must be cleared before new seeds are planted. A forest sometimes burns before renewal begins. Old skin must be shed before new skin emerges. The same principle exists within the human soul. Before wisdom arrives, something old often has to leave. This is why solitude can become such a powerful teacher. Not the loneliness that comes from abandonment. The solitude that comes from reflection. The solitude that allows a person to meet themselves again. Many people spend years surrounded by noise. Relationships, obligations, conversations, expectations, distractions. Then suddenly life removes someone important. And for the first time in years, they are alone with themselves. This can feel uncomfortable, even frightening, because solitude exposes truths that distraction keeps hidden. It reveals what remains when another person is no longer there to define your days. Who are you when nobody is validating you? Who are you when nobody is reassuring you? Who are you when nobody is constantly present? These questions often emerge after loss. And while painful, they can become the beginning of profound transformation. Marcus Aurelius spent countless hours in solitude. Despite ruling an empire, he repeatedly returned inward. Not because he disliked people, because he understood that clarity grows in stillness. The soul requires silence just as the body requires rest. Without silence, we hear only the world. With silence, we finally hear ourselves. This is why some of the greatest growth occurs after departures. Not during the relationship, After it, because once the noise settles, hidden lessons become visible. You begin recognizing patterns. You begin understanding mistakes. You begin seeing truths that emotion previously concealed. What once felt like destruction begins revealing itself as instruction. This does not mean every loss was meant to happen. Nor does it mean every departure was good. Some losses remain tragic. Some betrayals remain painful. Some endings remain deeply unfair. Wisdom does not require pretending otherwise. But wisdom does ask a different question. Now that it has happened, what will you do with it? Will you build a prison? Or a path? Many people unknowingly build prisons. They build them from resentment. Brick by brick. Memory by memory. They replay old conversations. Revisit old wounds. Rehearse old arguments. And every repetition strengthens the walls. Years pass. The relationship ends. Yet emotionally, they remain trapped inside it. The person is gone. The suffering remains. Not because the past is powerful. Because they continue feeding it. Marcus Aurelius understood something essential. The mind becomes what it repeatedly contemplates. Whatever occupies your attention eventually shapes your character. If your attention remains fixed upon betrayal, bitterness grows. If your attention remains fixed upon loss, despair grows. If your attention remains fixed upon injustice, resentment grows. The mind follows where attention leads. This is why forgiveness matters. Not as a gift to others. As a gift to yourself. Forgiveness is often misunderstood. People imagine forgiveness means approval. Excusing harmful behavior. Pretending nothing happened. But forgiveness is none of these things. Forgiveness simply means refusing to carry the poison any longer. Refusing to let another person's actions dictate your inner state. Refusing to allow old wounds to control future peace. It is an act of liberation. Not endorsement. The person who harmed you may never apologize. May never understand. May never acknowledge the damage they caused. If your healing depends upon their cooperation, you remain chained to them. Freedom begins when healing no longer requires their participation. Freedom begins when you decide your peace matters more than your resentment. This is not easy. Some wounds cut deeply. Some betrayals alter entire lives. Some losses leave scars that never completely disappear. But scars are not the same as open wounds. A scar is evidence of healing. Evidence that pain was survived. Evidence that life continued. The Stoics never promised a life without scars. They promised a life where scars become sources of wisdom rather than sources of suffering. And often, the deepest wisdom emerges from the deepest losses. Because loss strips away illusion. It reveals what truly matters. It exposes false priorities. It teaches humility. It teaches gratitude. It teaches impermanence. Most importantly, it teaches appreciation. The person who has lost understands the value of what remains. They no longer assume tomorrow is guaranteed. They no longer take love for granted. They no longer postpone meaningful conversations indefinitely. Loss becomes a teacher. A harsh teacher. But a teacher nonetheless. And eventually, something remarkable begins to happen. The pain softens. Not because the memory disappears. Because understanding grows. The heart stops asking why. And begins asking what now. The past loses its grip. The future regains its shape. The person who once felt broken begins feeling stronger. Not because they became harder. Because they became deeper. There is a profound difference. Hardness closes the heart. Depth expands it. Hardness creates distance. Depth creates wisdom. Hardness says never again. Depth says I understand more now. The wise do not become immune to loss. They become capable of carrying it gracefully. They stop expecting permanence from an impermanent world. They stop demanding certainty from an uncertain life. They stop resisting every ending. And because of this, they suffer less. Not because life becomes easier, because they become more aligned with reality. And reality, no matter how painful, is always lighter than illusion. The art of letting people go is ultimately not about losing others. It is about finding yourself again after they are gone. Finding the self that exists beyond attachment, beyond expectation, beyond dependency, beyond fear. A self rooted not in who stays, but in who you choose to become. A self rooted not in who stays, but in who you choose to become. And perhaps this is where the deepest Stoic wisdom reveals itself. Not in learning how to avoid loss, but in learning how to love despite it. Most people believe attachment and love are the same thing. Marcus Aurelius understood otherwise. Attachment fears loss. Love accepts it. Attachment says, please never leave. Love says, I am grateful you were here. Attachment attempts to possess. Love appreciates. Attachment clings to permanence. Love understands impermanence. This distinction may seem small, yet it changes the entire experience of being human. Because if you demand guarantees before loving, you will never truly love. Life offers no guarantees. Not for relationships. Not for health. Not for tomorrow. Everything we cherish exists on borrowed time. Every embrace, every conversation, every friendship, every shared sunrise, every person. And yet this does not make life tragic. It makes life precious. The rose is beautiful because it blooms briefly. The sunset is beautiful because it fades. A song is beautiful because it ends. And human relationships derive much of their beauty from the very fact that they are temporary. Mortality gives meaning to moments. Without endings, beginnings would lose their significance. Without loss, gratitude would lose its depth. Without impermanence, appreciation would lose its urgency. Marcus Aurelius reflected often on death. Not because he was obsessed with endings, because he understood that awareness of mortality sharpens awareness of life. The person who remembers death learns how to live. The person who remembers impermanence learns how to appreciate. The person who remembers loss learns how to love without possession. Imagine two travelers walking through a magnificent garden. One believes he owns every flower. The other understands he is merely visiting. Who appreciates the garden more deeply? The one who understands it cannot be kept. The one who knows every flower is temporary. The one who understands that beauty does not belong to him. Life itself is such a garden. The people who enter your life are flowers along the path. Some bloom beside you for decades. Others appear only briefly. Some leave fragrances that remain forever. Others leave lessons. Some bring joy. Some bring heartbreak. Yet all become part of the journey. And the wise traveler learns not to demand that every flower remain. He learns to appreciate each one while it blooms. This is the secret many people discover only after years of suffering. Peace does not come from preventing change. Peace comes from accepting it. The ocean remains peaceful not because waves stop coming, because it allows them to rise and fall. The sky remains vast not because clouds never appear, because it allows them to pass. And the wise soul remains calm not because life avoids loss, because it accepts loss as part of life. Acceptance is often misunderstood. People mistake it for surrender, for weakness, for passivity. But acceptance is one of the strongest acts a human being can perform. Because acceptance requires facing reality without illusion, without denial, without fantasy, without resistance. It requires looking directly at what is, and saying this is part of life, not because you enjoy it, because you understand it. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that every event arrives through nature's unfolding order. Things happen, people arrive, people leave, fortunes rise, fortunes fall, bodies age, empires collapse, generations pass, and beneath all of it exists a larger rhythm that no individual controls. The wise stop fighting that rhythm. They begin moving with it, like a skilled sailor adjusting to the wind rather than arguing with it. The sailor cannot command the sea, but he can learn how to navigate it. Likewise, you cannot control who stays. You cannot control who leaves. You cannot control every ending. But you can control how you meet those endings. With bitterness, or with grace, with resentment, or with understanding, with fear, or with courage. This choice remains yours. Always. And over time, this choice shapes character. The person who repeatedly chooses acceptance becomes lighter. Not because their life contains less pain, because they carry less resistance. The person who repeatedly chooses gratitude becomes richer. Not because they possess more, because they appreciate more. The person who repeatedly chooses release becomes freer. Not because they lose nothing, because they cling to nothing. This is the paradox at the heart of Stoicism. The less desperately you hold, the more peacefully you live. The less you demand from life, the more grateful you become for what life provides. The less you fear endings, the more fully you embrace beginnings. And eventually, something extraordinary occurs. You stop viewing departures as evidence of failure. You stop viewing endings as enemies. You stop viewing change as a threat. Instead, you begin seeing them as chapters. Natural chapters. Necessary chapters. Chapters that contribute to the larger story of your becoming. Because every person who entered your life helped shape who you are. Even those who hurt you. Even those who betrayed you. Even those who left. Especially those who left. They revealed strengths you did not know existed. Patience, resilience, compassion, wisdom, self-reliance, courage. Without the loss, these qualities might have remained dormant forever. The storm revealed the roots. The departure revealed the strength. The ending revealed the lesson. And now, standing where you are today, you can finally understand something many never do. The goal was never to keep everyone. The goal was never to avoid every goodbye. The goal was never to build a life free from loss. The goal was to become the kind of person who remains whole even when loss arrives. A person capable of loving deeply without clinging. A person capable of remembering without suffering. A person capable of grieving without becoming broken. A person capable of saying goodbye without losing themselves. This is the art. Not the art of making people stay. The art of remaining at peace when they cannot. And if there is one truth Marcus Aurelius might whisper to the modern soul, it is this: love people fully. Appreciate them deeply. Walk beside them gratefully. But never forget that they are travelers just as you are. Some will walk with you for miles. Some for moments. Some until the very end. Yet all are moving beneath the same sky toward the same horizon. And when the moment comes to part ways, do not curse the journey because it ended. Be grateful that it happened at all. For nothing real is lost. The lessons remain. The memories remain. The growth remains. The wisdom remains. And the person you became because of that connection remains. So release what must be released. Bless what must be blessed. Remember what deserves remembering. And continue walking. Not with bitterness. Not with regrets. But with the quiet dignity of someone who understands one of life's deepest truths: some people are meant to stay forever. Most are not. And peace begins the moment you stop fighting that reality. The moment you stop trying to hold every leaf through autumn. The moment you stop demanding permanence from a changing world. The moment you learn to open your hand instead of closing your fist. For an open hand can still receive. A closed fist cannot. And the soul that learns how to let go discovers something unexpected waiting on the other side of every goodbye. Not emptiness. Not despair. Not loneliness. Freedom. A deeper peace. A wiser heart. and a life lived in harmony with the way things truly are.